Video 47. Don't expect help or empathy if you have cult-induced PTSD. It There's one thing, there's a concept in sort of psychology, psychiatry known as relative-based trauma. Not a relative, but, it's like, if you got a young person there and they get a girlfriend or they get a boyfriend and it falls apart and it goes wrong or whatever, even not in an abusive way, let's say, but oh gosh, she's weeping and she's wailing and she's saying it's the end of the world and she's gonna end her life or whatever because she broke up with her boyfriend. It's sort of like, for her it's everything, but there's what, there's obviously a lot of worse happens in this world, but it's still a big deal for that person. Right, somebody else, they might have served on the front line and they might have got their leg blown off. Slightly more important, isn't it? Or, you were on the front line and your friend, got blown to bits by an IED or something, Slightly more traumatic. Right, where was I? So, you got a young person that a relationship ends, even if there was no abuse happening, and for them it's the end of the world. They're weeping, they're wailing, what's the point in living, the usual drama and mayhem and you don't understand, whoa. And there can be violence, there can be shouting, there can be fighting, just because a relationship has ended. Right? Are they still eating? Yes, they are. Are they living in the Hamptons or the housewives of Orange County or something like that? Oh God, it's, but to them, you can have these, I don't know why I watched it, I've only ever seen it once, but these real housewives of Orange County, right? A lot of them are fucking stinking rich. They're living in mansions. They drive around in Porsches and Range Rovers, and they're on the camera and they're bitching to each other about how hard life is. And it's like, oh God, first world problems, seriously. But to them, all the emotion is real. It's real drama, it's real feelings, but you're living in a fucking mansion. You drive around in a fucking Range Rover. You eat at Beverly Hills every day, twice a day, and you're honestly expecting somebody to have empathy for you. I'll go and make myself feel better with some shopping therapy. And then you look in her wardrobe and she's got 500 pairs of shoes and 500 dresses. And most of us don't have any kind of empathy for, these rich bitches, that are moaning about whatever. But some of them, they might be getting abused, real abuse, you don't know. But it's amazing how even people living in luxury can feel really depressed. It is genuine depression, it is genuine trauma, but it's like, come on, you're never going to starve, you're never going to go hungry. And they will have no empathy for people starving to death in the third world, and they expect, they feel entitled. Oh, what a hard life I have, as a multi-millionaire living in a mansion, eating steak out twice a day, or it's enough to make you want to pull your hair out, But what I'm talking about on this channel is cult-induced post-traumatic disorder. I'm not after empathy, because actually some of the people that I hang around with, we've been through the same stuff together. We've got our little fellowship of ex-cult members, and, to be honest, we rarely talk about the cult. We talk about other things. We talk about what's going on in the news or whatever. We talk about life, meet up, have a coffee or whatever. But it's actually a good life. It's a good life, even though I have no job, no wife, no kids. None of that. Estranged from family. You know, the mental breakdowns. The most days I wake up and I think, what the fuck am I still doing here? What is there? What is there to do? Um, it's some people. You think there's somebody who's going to wave a magic wand and just make your problems go away. But what are you honestly expecting people to do? That I mean, I remember when I had the first mental breakdown and I was in this hospital because the cult said, "Oh, your mother's going to hell." That's a shame, isn't it? They said it in a nice way. Oh, it's a shame she didn't make it, you know, or it's a shame she didn't become a disciple, But what they're actually saying is she's gone to hell and she's going to burn forever, and I don't really give a fuck, and that's all I've got to say about it. It's like, well, because your mother's died, then you should be going out saving other people's mothers, kind of thing. It's like, oh, fuck's sake, mate, have a fucking bit of empathy. But we live in a world where so many people do not give a shit about anything apart from their own situation, right? And one of the most healing things you can do is actually show empathy to other people, you know. Um, and it's a strange one. I mean, because so many people are so selfish, or they simply don't have the ability to help you. I mean, one of my best friends, he wants to help, but he's not and I want to help him, but I'm not a psychiatrist. I could never be a psychiatrist because there's no money. I mean, university used to be free in the UK. I'm surprised they're not charging for A levels next. I shouldn't give them that idea, should I? But it's because the world is so fucked up, and there's so many people who are fucked up by cults, by war, by whatever, people who've been abused. There's always somebody who's had it harder than you, but that doesn't make you feel better. There's a saying that sometimes people say to me, you should be grateful, worse things happen at sea. As if what happened to you doesn't matter. I think that's some of the, it's like you got a teenage daughter and she's broken up with her boyfriend. Oh, it could be worse. Not for her, it couldn't be. No, she is in an intense emotional situation where she genuinely feels like not being here. Even though it might be, oh, you broke up with your boyfriend, but you've still got a roof over your head. You still eat 3 times a day. You've still got food. And what's worse is when they might watch the news and they might say, oh, 100 people died in an earthquake. Oh, well, that doesn't matter. I've lost my boyfriend. These people, they're just dying. It really is enough to make you pull your hair out if you are the type of person that actually gives a shit about anything, right? Now, there are people who I've met in the past, cult leaders, that type of people, multi-level marketing people. They don't give a shit about anything apart from themselves. It's just not in their head. Empathy, sympathy, thinking of other people, it's simply not in their brain. It's like the optional extra that isn't in the car. They don't have empathy. They don't have sympathy. It hasn't developed in them. You get more empathy from an animal than you would some humans, I tell you. But it's this, when you have had help, I got help in the early 2000s. When I was in mental hospital, I got to see this psychiatrist every sort of 4 or 5 days, and we talked. And even though we only talked for like 15 minutes or whatever, just his demeanour, just his bedside manner, he came across as he actually cared. That was his calling in life. to be a psychiatrist, talking therapy, I'll always remember him. You know, even though I only probably saw the guy for about 2 hours altogether, you know, it's like somebody actually gave a shit. Now, I don't know whether he was on a six-figure salary or not or whatever, but it's so nice when somebody gives a shit. But it can then, it's like rubbing salt in the wounds. It's like somebody's allowed you to say something. And then you've got the whole floodgates of your whole life. You're trying to tell somebody in 10 minutes. You know, and these days they only give you, I mean, I haven't seen a doctor, I can't remember when. But you can't, I mean, in the UK, right, even though the NHS gets billions, I saw a psychiatrist once, altogether probably about an hour or two at most, you know, but I can't work. Every day I wake up feeling, what's the point in living? Um, and there's so many people like me, yeah, and you're delusional if you think anyone gives a fuck, you know, and it's like you don't have access to these psychiatrists if you're broke or unemployed or whatever. It's almost like that. I think the NHS policy is just leave all the people who've had mental breakdowns together and they'll heal each other. Yeah, yeah. And to be honest, this is what happens. You know, I mean, I've had so many trips to the cafe. These days, you can't afford a cup of coffee, so you got to meet in a field and have a glass of water because that's all you can afford. Um, you know, but just getting time with other humans who have been through similar experiences is healing. It really is. And there's nobody who's got a magic wand that can heal all your problems. Because look how fucked up the world is. And even though the GDP is trillions or whatever, nobody gives a fuck. You're disposable. You don't mean anything. You know, I mean, trying to get a job. Why would somebody hire me when they could hire somebody who hasn't been through the hell of a cult experience? Right? The world is brutal. The world is savage. The world doesn't give a fuck. You know, that's what it is. I mean, you've got a president that's boasting and bragging about how much money he's making, but don't look at all the dead bodies whose healthcare he's taken away, who he's deported, who chose to live in America, you know, maybe chose to do a low paid job, but it's better than where they've come from. But no, they're the wrong colour or they're the wrong religion, kick them out. You know, we live in a world that is run by psychopaths, yeah, and you expect empathy. You know, it is what it is. I mean, there's so many times I've been close to the edge and people I know, you know, there's one guy I'm working with at the moment. It's actually quite hard to get through to him, but he's clinically depressed. He's still just about working. He was only in the cult for about 6 months. And that's the level of damage they did to him in 6 months. You know, he's just about functional. Before the cult, like a year ago, yeah, he was all right. If he'd found a normal church, he might have been doing well. But, right, I must end this video because I had to crop the 46B. So yeah, I mean, suffering is relative. But people expect you to be sorry for them, but don't expect them to be sorry for you. That's just the fucking brutal truth of it. If you've got friends, that's your psychiatrist. Yeah? They might not be any good at psychiatry, but all you've got is your buddies. That's all you've fucking got in this world is your buddies. You can't afford anything else, and that's the way it is.